and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening, folks, and thanks for being here tonight. Board members, make sure your mics are on so that we can hear you. Tonight, before we get started, a couple of things I'd like to take a few minutes, maybe a moment of silence of some people that we have lost here in our township. One, I'm not sure if you knew Janet Hill, who was Bob Hill's wife. She has passed away. Bob served on the planning commission here for many years, and I'd like to mention that. Most we mentioned before of Christopher Kimler, which is Mark Kimler's son, that passed away at a young age, and then. Just recently, we lost a firefighter who was a young man, I feel. Ryan Roselli passed away here just in the last week at the funeral. And so he served on the fire department for many years. So we deeply miss him. And his family, we want to keep them in our prayers and our thoughts. As we're in this time of remembering and maybe a few minutes of silence, also, I have to share with my brother, Del Wensley here. His wife came through a major surgery here this week. She's doing fine. We've been praying for you guys and pray for her speedy recovery. So let's take a few minutes. Father in heaven, we thank you tonight for your goodness to us. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for the wisdom that we receive from you. We know that in your word you have said that you are the great comforter. We pray that you would bless these families, be their comforter at this time. And Father, we just pray that the wisdom that we get, that all of us would reach out to you during this past Thanksgiving, how thankful we are to be in this great country, to be in this township, how we thank you for your goodness to us. I thank you so much for the members of the board, their wisdom, and your wisdom, that we would ask that we would all look to you for guidance. We thank thee for our people in our township. We ask that you would bless them, bless their families at this holiday season. And again, we just lift these people up to you tonight and ask you to bless them in your holy name. Amen. Amen. Okay, tonight for our roll call tonight, everybody's present. Before you have an agenda that is before us, if there's any deletions or additions this time. Okay, if not, agenda stands as approved. So we're down to public comment. Yes, Joe.
Thank you. I'll come up to the microphone because it's year end. I just want to give an update on Arbor Hills. It's been a tremendously busy year this year. A couple things that residents here should be aware of is that, number one, recently we've had the road that enters into our customer drop-off area paved. So that's going to be a nice smooth entrance for you right now. It's an important resource to the community. We appreciate all the people who have come to visit and who have given their feedback, and we continue to make improvements based on that feedback. A couple things we're going to be addressing pretty soon is a new sign directing people onto the scales, and also an improved access to that larger of the two recycling bins. The larger project that we've been investing a lot of time and energy into, largely with the gas collection and control system, this project is actually nearing completion. As many people in this room know, when we acquired that system early last year, it was in a state of great distress. The work on it continues. It's nearing completion. We're hoping by the end of this year, but it is nearing completion. And over the past few weeks, as contractors have been installing and tuning key equipment, we've had to shut down parts of that system or modify them. And this has increased the potential for odor creation. And there have been odors. Please know that we're mindful of the inconvenience it causes. We understand and appreciate the frustration of those who have experienced the odors. But in the big picture, this is why we're doing the work, because we don't want our neighbors to experience the odors. Alongside this project, we're working with the DEQ. We've just submitted a draft of a comprehensive odor control plan, which involves the landfill, the gas collection system, and the composting. So you're getting a better landfill at the end of this process. We hope that the people in this community can appreciate or will notice the fruits of these actions in the coming months. And as always, we're here at these meetings to take any questions, and you know where to find us at the landfill. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Wayne?
Yeah, two questions, two follow-up questions, if you could, please. From the last meeting regarding the infrastructure for the Urban Services District, you talked about how the residents would not be required to connect to the public utilities there, to current residents. And also, when you put together your ordinance, your sewer ordinance, I know there's going to be provisions in there like there were in a draft ordinance, or I'm assuming. And one of the concerns that I had is that in the draft ordinance it stated that if we sold our homes, that someone that purchased our home would be required. And my belief was, and I've voiced this numerous times, was that would put an undue burden on the residents, and they'd have to negotiate that connection fee in their house, and that's just a reasonable concern, and many of my neighbors share that same concern. Have you considered that? Will the new people, if I sold my house and that sewer was available, would the new people be required to connect to it?
Yeah, if I can make a statement on this, is public comment, but I will answer the question. First of all, the draft that was put out, I don't know, how long ago was that?
A year ago, maybe.
A year ago.
Almost a year and a half.
It was a simple draft that was put together by other townships and communities. It was just stuff to bring to the board to talk about. We decided not to talk about it, bring it, because Yucca at the time had to address some issues that they had before we could create our ordinance. And what I understand is now that it's done, it can be brought for discussion, and have it. But I'm under, my thought, one vote, is that no. Well, we've said that our people do not have to connect to the system, and that's, so once we get to that ordinance, we will put that out, it'll be on the agenda, and we will address that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
In my last, two questions, sorry, thank you for that. At the last meeting, you referenced the fact that when you entered office, you were told that immediately you had it was a court order, you said, to write a check for $250,000 to Showstack/Salem Springs. Could you expand on that and give us the circumstances that led up to that, and why did you have to pay the $250,000? You've mentioned that a number of times, and could you elaborate?
Weren't you on the board at the time?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so you should have known that. So first of all, this is a public comment. I'm not going to make any comments, but afterwards, during general comments, let's get through this, and we'll talk about it.
It just, I think it was a little
Okay,
correction.
anybody else? Okay. Okay.
No, I just need some clarification on it.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, because I think you may have misspoken.
Okay, well, we can talk about that later. So this is public comment. This is not time for me to answer your question.
Well, I'll make it my comment then.
Go.
Because you said it was a court order. I believe it was a arbitration decision.
Okay. Okay. All right.
There's a substantial
Anybody
difference
else?
between an arbitration decision and a court order. Wouldn't you agree to that?
Okay. All right.
It was reduced to a judgment.
What?
The arbitration award was reduced to a judgment.
Okay, all right.
There is a court judgment,
Okay. All right,
as Mr. Fisher knows.
all right. So public comment's done. So now we're down to the consent agenda. Mr. Wenzel.
I move that Salem Township approve the following consent agenda items. We have the disbursements for November out of the general fund of $117,234.38. That's checks 27,942 through 2826. We had a payroll of $45,292.41, a core of $193.60. Out of the sewer fund, we had $5,937.49. That's checks 2059 and 2060. We had checks dispersed out of the escrow fund for $26,990. That's checks 1793 and 1799. And out of the new MEDC fund, we wrote disbursements of $76,396 and 24 cents. That's checks 23 through 31. Now for invoices for December, we have out of the general fund $52,772 and 20 cents. We're also adding to that tonight, which is not on your board packet. The Plato Law Firm added some invoices that didn't make it on here for some reason, so we have to add $7,826 and 60 cents. So now the total is $60,598 and 80 cents. Invoices for the escrow fund, $11,723. Out of the sewer fund, $9,946 and 78 cents. And out of the new MEDC fund, sewer invoices of $20,788 and 86 cents. And lastly, for the water, $81,210 and 59 cents. Do we have a second on these?
I'll second them. Okay, John Daniel seconds. Any other questions on the consent agenda? Okay, if not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's passed. Okay, moving down to business items, administrative. First, the Salem Springs Extension. Mr. Lindsley, if you want to read,
I will read
we can have some
the
discussion.
motion. It's a page long, so here we go. A motion to approve the third amended ordinance. This ordinance rezoning approximately 370 acres situated north of Joy Road between Napier and Godfredson from RRA to PUD. The supporting motion for approval of the third amended PUD ordinance is as stated. On January 13th, 2015, the Township Board approved an amendment to the Salem Township zoning ordinance to rezone approximately 370 acres situated north of Joy between Napier and Godfredson from research and research applications, which is the RRA, to a PUD development district. And such ordinance subsequently became effective according to its terms provided by this PUD ordinance on that date. On January 12th, 2016, the Township Board approved a first amended PUD ordinance which extended the PUD expiration deadline until January 27th, 2017. On November 21st, 2016, the Salem Township Planning Commission recommended approval of an amended PUD area plan dated November 17th, 2016 for the Salem Springs residential parcels, subject to certain conditions. On January 10th, 2017, the Township Board approved a second amended PUD ordinance which extended the expiration deadline until January 31st, 2019. As a condition to becoming completely effective, the PUD ordinance and the first and second amended PUD ordinances require the Township and the owner/developer to negotiate a mutually satisfactory development agreement with the PUD ordinance specifying in part that if a mutually acceptable development agreement cannot be reached within the time limit set forth in the PUD ordinance, the ordinance and the PUD approval granted, including the area plan, they shall be deemed null and void. Owing in no respect to the lack of diligence or good faith on anyone's part, the parties have been unable to complete the terms of a development agreement due to unforeseen and changing circumstances relating to the source and financing of the public utilities and requirements of outside governmental agencies, as contemplated in the PUD ordinance, First and Second Amendment PUD ordinances. Such circumstances have required further investigation, negotiation, and efforts by all the interested parties. Consequently, the owner, developer, and the township believe it would be appropriate to amend Section 1B3C of the Second Amended PUD ordinance in the manner stated in the attached and incorporated Third Amended PUD ordinance to extend the expiration of the ordinance as stated therein. And it is moved by Mr. Whitaker, but I'm reading it, and we need a second.
I'll second it. Okay, John, thank you. So we can have some discussion on this. What I have recommended that this be for a year. This would be till, Ed, what is the, is it January of?
January 31st of 2020 would be the extension.
For December 31st.
No, it'd be January 31st.
January.
Because it was January
Got it.
31st
Right.
of 2019 is the current expiration date.
So, the only comment that I just want to make on this, I mean, last month we did talk in length about what has been going on negotiating between the developers and the township of a way to finance the utilities. Nothing has come up solid to anything to be started. I think our first hurdle, as we talked about, is getting through Superior Township, other permits that still have to be required. One is the Road Commission, Superior Township, of issues that we are dealing with. Some of the stakeholders met with us yesterday actually, and so everybody's at the table, but nobody is, there are some that are committed and some that are not. And so between working with the proper permitting, that means from, you know, our, if it's the DEQ permits, if it's the Drain Commission, if it's the Road Commission, and it's Superior Township, these things have to be, we have to get this, in other words, we can collect all the money we want, but if we don't get that sewer to go that way, then what is our next alternative? So the township and I believe the developers have been working good together to figure out what is the best alternative to get utilities for their properties if this comes, and that they are going to be footing the bill for it. So we're at this time now. I think we have to be careful, and again, I don't want to be pointing any fingers, but you know, there have been some residents who have called some of the agencies and have gotten the information wrong. And as far as that, permits have already been given out. And the people of these agencies, it's not true, it has not been done yet. So I think we just want to make sure, again, you're more than welcome to call me anytime if you hear something or you're not understanding. We can, I can take you down there to the Road Commission or any of these places to give you the answers that they're giving us. So I just want to be cautious of the fact that we don't want to put out false rumors out there that some of the stuff has already been done, because it hasn't. But, so anyway, discussion board of anything else that...
Mr. Supervisor, if I can just add to
Yeah.
that. The PUD ordinance will expire by its terms at the end of next month if a development agreement is not reached between the township and the developer. We are very close to having a development agreement. We've gone through, we've had several meetings, we have all the terms pretty well worked out. The major stumbling block to completing the development agreement is the financing. And now we have really the other, as Supervisor Whitaker mentioned, the other property owners in the USD, the commercial owners, have stepped up to the plate. Many of them have indicated they want to participate in the financing of the utilities and the infrastructure, but they haven't committed to what that exact dollar amount is going to be. One of the reasons for that is because, again, as Mr. Whitaker mentioned, the engineers have had to go through an approval process where the plans have to be submitted to outside agencies such as the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, the Road Commission, the County Drain Commissioner's Office. And those submission of plans have come back with additional conditions that they want the township to meet. The biggest one was with the MDEQ office came back because we have a force main running 10 miles through Superior Township. The MDEQ said you have to have some way to fix this. If it breaks somewhere and goes down, you have to have bypasses installed every 1,000 feet or whatever it is, every 5,000 feet. So that was a major cost that had to come back to the engineers. That had to be redesigned. Those new equipment had to be added to the system, and that, of course, delayed. That all occurred this year. So we're at the stage where we don't have those final approvals. There have been submittals to those agencies, including the Road Commission, but they have not yet come back and issued the permit or the final approval. So we're still waiting on those, and until we know exactly what's going to be required by all those outside agencies, the engineers can't put a final figure on what it's going to cost because they don't know if any additional improvements are going to be needed. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but we hope that'll be obviously wrapped up over the next year. We'll meet the requirements of the outside agencies. We'll get all the engineering done. We'll have a final figure, and at that point, we'll be able to sit down and figure out exactly who's going to pay what of the property owners in the USD. We'll be able to come up with a financing plan, finalize a development agreement, and at that point, should be able to move this forward.
You're looking at me, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Mr. Plato, based on what you just summarized, what's a realistic time frame that all of this activity would take based on where we're at today and having the PUD or the development agreement on the fringe of being completed?
Well, as I indicated, Mr. Trent, unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't predict what these other governmental agencies are going to require. But I think we're very close on the development agreement except for the terms of the financing. And once we figure out what the exact cost of the system is going to be, who's going to participate, we will be able to finalize those financing provisions of the development agreement.
Does the financing agreement have to be predicated on other stakeholders being involved in the process? Or based on this ordinance, it appears that the responsibility lies with the applicant, Salem Springs?
Well, I think having the other property owners involved is going to allow the township to implement more complete infrastructure for the urban service district as opposed to what may be needed just for the residential development currently before the Planning Commission. So I think it's in the best interest of the township to try and get all the property owners involved and get commitments from them, because we can put in a more complete system than we probably could otherwise.
Will those other property owners be included in the development agreement, or is it still going to read the developer?
It would still read the developer. We will have a separate agreements with those other and commitments from the other property owners as to what they will be financing, and that will be spelled out in the development agreement as far as the financing provisions in the development agreement.
Mr. Supervisor, this board will recall a year ago I made a motion to adjust the maximum number of units as an amendment. That was rejected by this board. I think we come to another crossroads in the road here, where we have three options. We either accept the extension as submitted, we let this thing come to a complete halt and reject this motion, or we make some minor modifications that I think strengthen the township's position. And to that end, I'd like to make the amendment to the motion where on page 4, at the top of the page, that the deadline for the financing plan, which is now stated December 31st, 2019, be amended to June 11th, 2019. That's approximately 6 months from today. And that is a Tuesday night of our board meeting, and I would like the developer to work at their best efforts to comply with a financing plan by that date. So I'd like to make a motion to amend this document to revise that date to June 11th, 2019.
So do we have a second on that? Okay, I don't hear one. Again, I think, I guess, you know, Mr. Plato, I've been involved in this as much as anybody that sits up here. I can honestly tell you, I mean, there's a lot of things that happens that, you know, you might not like, but then there are other things that where I think everybody is working together to see if this thing is gonna happen, then the financing's gonna come in one way or the other, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't happen. But I do think that as I said before and mentioned, not to bring this about the other agencies that aren't allowing or some of the hurdles that we have to get over. I think we have to remember that unless you're gonna put a wastewater treatment plant in that area, there's really no other way for us to get utilities for sewer, which, you know, according to our engineers, just the sewer alone would be 30 million. So, I think that we still need to work together, and I can honestly tell you that some of the other big developers over there have, you know, they're not against it, they want to see what avenues the township is taking to, you know, how are we going to get a sewer to Yucca, and that's a big concern of everybody's, and we got to see if that can be worked out. And meanwhile, it goes on. But I guess what I'm saying is that whatever the developer comes and brings to us as far as a financial plan, I think we have to look at everything that they bring us. And I think that's what's said here in the agreement. I mean, I don't want to say anything, you know, about with the developer sitting here tonight, but I still would like to say, you know, if we don't get the permits or permission to go through Superior Township, you know, it could be another 10 years. It could be another 20. I mean, I'm sure they're not happy about that, but again, I think that we have to look at all avenues, and that's what we've been trying. You know, we first, as we talked about last week, or last month, we talked about Plymouth, we talked about other alternatives, and we talked to Wayne County, that goes into the Great Lakes Authority. You know, I just think we're looking at all the options. And meanwhile, while this is going on, the developer is paying the bill. So I do want to make that clear.
That's true. The contract we have with Yucca for reserving capacity, the annual payments for those are being paid by show staff.
Right. But even the meetings, I mean, which you like it or not, they're paying your bill.
They're paying my bills.
Paying for the engineering.
Yeah.
And paying for the engineers.
Yeah.
Shows tax paying for the engineering?
I thought the
That's not coming out of the grant money?
Well, the grant money is being used for the design of the system. Anything related to design and construction comes out of the grant money. But when we have meetings with the engineers, that's paid out of the escrow.
But the grant money, how much of the grant money is being used?
Wayne,
for
you're
the-
out of line.
for
So
the-
this is not a problem. I didn't ask for you to talk. I'm running the meeting. This is how it's going to be run. So I'm just warning you now, this is how we're running the meeting. You're able to talk when it's public comment. That's how it's going to be run. So, all right. So any other comments from the board?
Mr. Supervisor, before we pass on Mr. Trent's motion, would we not have dollar amounts by June?
I guess I can't say, I would have thought we would have the permits by these different agencies, but they've been languishing, they've been turned back to the engineers for further revisions and further improvements, so I really have no idea how long it's going to take them to
So
do
I
it.
guess my question is it really necessary for a whole other year extension?
Well, I just think
Can we
we
not
need,
revisit this at the June 11th meeting? And if we have to extend it another 6 months at that time, or is it more reasonable to go a whole other year, I guess is the question. I would think we'd have engineering figures by that time.
We may, I guess the opposite question would be, what's the benefit to extending it only 6 months as opposed to 1 year? And then within that time, we should have everything completed. I mean, obviously, if we can get the approvals from the other agencies and everything done before the end of next year, I'm sure the developer wants to move forward and do things as quickly as possible. So if it can be done earlier, it's going to be accomplished earlier.
Mr. Supervisor, could I interject a comment based on Mr. DeLuca's inquiry? And I would respond that the developer has had an additional year to work on a financial plan. The developer is an astute developer. They've been at this game for many, many years, the Showstack organization, family-run business for probably 60 or more years now. They know everything about development. They know how to estimate costs. Over the last year, they've actually increased their holdings in the Urban Service District. The developer now controls 80% of all the vacant land in the USD. I think the developer has known, with the assistance of their own engineers, what the realistic ballpark costs are to bring infrastructure to the USD. And I think this board has been very patient. We've worked I think we've worked cooperatively with the developer at all times in the last several years as this thing has been dialogue. And I think we should require a more complete financial plan on how this is all going to come about within the next 6-month time frame. I think Mr. DeLuca's comment is well taken, that if we see that there are circumstances or issues that develop over the next 6 months, we can certainly revisit this issue. But, the developer, through their political connections and lobbying efforts, was able to acquire through the MEDC a $10 million grant. Now, I don't know if 3 years ago the developer had any idea that they might be able to acquire a $10 million grant that this township is benefiting by to help develop the infrastructure for the USD. But I would think they would be able to take that into account into whatever financial plan they were devising on their own prior to that taking place. Because up until the last year and a half, where the township took the initiative to bring stakeholders to the table to help with the potential financial game plan that we've been facilitating, the developer had to be devising a plan on their own, because at that time, they were the Lone Ranger bringing infrastructure to the table. Coupled with that, though it's a minor point, we talked about this in the past, in that same section on page 4, there's a requirement that they provide a monthly report to us. That has been very sporadic in their compliance with that aspect. Again, a minor point, we talked about it before, but I would hope whatever extension is provided at this point, that we would see a monthly report of some nature devising what their financial plan is to make this infrastructure come to fruition.
So, the only other point, Mr. Trent, I'd like to make, maybe we've brushed on this before, so is when the other developers that we've met with, it's like you try to see what part of this they're going to be committed to. You know, I'd have to think, if I was a property owner in the USD, it's like I don't know if I would want to commit to anything when I don't know if anything's really going to happen. So, you know, you're talking to, I would say, the big players over there that have a lot of land. It's like there's hurdles that we have to get over first. So, I just don't want to keep bringing this up all the time, whatever. I just think, I think in a year's time, between working with these agencies and that, we've got to get, you know, and we got to get some figures together for our engineers. You know, again, we got good engineers, great engineers, but that cost has gone up significantly. You know, at one time, we said that the sewer was only going to be, I don't know, 12, 13 million. And now it's 17?
Well, at one time, the water and sewer together were going to be about 20 million, and now together they're up to 30
Now it's at
million.
30. And again, I just,
But
again,
whose fault is that?
again, if it gets, you know, if it gets to whatever that price is, that's, you know, it's got to be paid for. So, I don't know. There's still a lot to be done on it, so. So any other discussion? Do we have a second on Mr. Trent's or not? We'll move on. Okay, if not, we have a second. We do a roll call vote on this?
So there was no second on the
Right, there was
motion
no
to
second.
amend, so that dies for
Okay.
lack of a second, so we're back to the original motion.
All right. Back to the original motion. And Mr. Daniels seconded, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Now we'll call for the roll call vote.
All right. We'll start with Converse.
Vote to extend.
So that's a yes. Daniel?
Yes.
DeLuca?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Trent?
Yay.
Wensley, yes. And Whitaker?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments from the, all right,
Thank you, and we'll continue to work with the township.
okay, thank you, guys. Okay, moving on down to the Walker Drain, this item number 2. That's you.
At the meeting of the Salem Township Board held in Washington County, state of Michigan, on this date at 7 p.m. present here and have the following resolutions as offered by myself, and will be seconded. Whereas the township requests the improvements of the drain located in Washington County pursuant to Chapter 18 of Public Act 40 of 1956 as amended, and whereas the township has determined that the improvements of the drain is necessary for the public health in the township, and whereas the township will be liable for 16.23% of the cost related to the work performed on the drain by the drain district. Now therefore be resolved that the township board does authorize the filing of the 425 agreement to improve the drain. Be it further resolved that the supervisor has authorization to execute the agreement for the improvement of the drain, and be it further resolved that the clerk shall forward the Washington County Walker Resource Commission a copy of this resolution for the 425 agreement for the improvements of the drain. Do I have a second?
Second. Oh, TJ? Okay, TJ.
Okay, further discussion on this. This is a drain, the Walker drain. This is the drain that flows around Dixboro between 6 and 7 Mile Road, which is shared with Northfield Township. And so what they're recommending here, I know Dale, you've had some conversations with them, that this project is going to be shared by all three, which would be the county, Northfield Township, which I've heard Dave agreed, and then also Salem Township.
And that's what happened here.
I'll turn this on.
One of the essence has happened is that there was some major culverts. I think there was a culvert that, over Dixboro that has failed. They have to go back through and replace it. And the road commission has authorized, they put an estimate that it's gonna cost about $250,000 to replace this drain, which they're gonna pick up 2/3 of it, and the other third is gonna be shared between Northfield Township and us. And so that's kind of what it's necessary for, and we need this motion in order to approve our share of the bill that's gonna become due.
Mr. Converse, also, just to add comments, this is not only replacing the culvert there, but it also is, there's a real flood issue there. That there's to be, during that Walker drain, there'll be a lot of clean out. That's part of that job that needs to be done. But that's been an ongoing, when the rains come heavy, that whole area is underwater. The houses are actually too, a couple houses that are in that area right there, so. Okay,
But there is one bright spot on this, and we have to check it out and make sure, but last year we fronted $220,000 to pave Curry Road between 7 and 8 Mile, and that is to be, we can use that as a credit over the next 2 years. So, in fact, actually, as far as money from this, we can, hopefully we can go back and get this picked up by the county, our portion of it.
which is about 40,
This would be about roughly $40-some thousand, $42,000, something like that.
okay. Any other questions on this?
When would it start if we approve it? Is this an immediate thing? Is it
I did not ask that.
Yeah, they didn't give us a timeline.
price
They,
driving, the price?
what?
Is it a problem with the road?
There is a problem with that culvert in the road. It's really deteriorating. It's on the side. It's almost, they keep putting gravel in there. When I get calls. But I think they need this approval in Northfield Township, and then they'll get it on the books to get done. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor? I don't know if we need a roll call on this. No? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's passed. All right, Mr. John Daniel on the marijuana.
Yeah, motion to approve the prohibition of marijuana establishments. I move that Salem Township approve ordinance 2018-12-11-03, which is an ordinance that prohibits marijuana establishments within the borders of Salem Township pursuant to initiated law 1 of 2018, MCL 333.27951 through MCL 333.27967, to provide penalties for violation of this ordinance, to provide for severability, and to repeal all ordinances that conflict with this ordinance. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Mr. Winsley, any further discussion, board members?
Question I have with regards to, thing that I have a little bit of problem was when it says we will provide penalties for the violation. How is that going to be administered? Who's gonna be, we're gonna have the police find the reports, we're gonna have to have local numbers, or how is this gonna be administered?
Normally, that would be the Washington County Sheriff's Office that would do your local enforcement of that.
Then we don't have to have a constable.
You don't have to have a marijuana patrol officer.
Raise your right hand.
Mr. Supervisor, just out of curiosity, would Clerk Wensley happen to know off the top of his head how our community voted on Prop 1 related to this?
All propositions got a yes vote, surprisingly. So the marijuana issue did pass.
A large percentage, or was it razor thin?
No, it was a good majority, probably 60-40.
Just curious.
Yeah.
As a information for the board, and being in the office quite a bit, we've had quite a few people coming back in and starting inquiring about growing marijuana.
Okay.
Yeah. So Ed, even though the proposal at the state of Michigan, that level, it did pass. And so now we're, in a sense, saying that Salem Township prohibits it. Could there be a case where someone could sue the township for going against that proposal? I mean, is there some issues that we have to look at?
No, because the new law permitting recreational marijuana specifically allows local governments to have ordinances prohibiting, establishing marijuana establishments in their jurisdiction.
Yeah, we're not prohibiting people from being able to have it in their home, we're just preventing retail establishments.
That's correct. Individuals could still grow up to 12 plants in their home and consume marijuana in their home. I'm not going to give any advice beyond that, where else they may be able to consume it, but they would still be protected in their homes if they have no more than 12 marijuana plants.
Okay. All right, so we have a second on that, right?
Yes.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, we need a roll call on this as an ordinance. Okay, Mr. Wensley?
All right,
Call the roll.
Converse,
Yes,
Daniel,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Wensley, yes, and Whitaker?
Yes. Okay, so we're down to Mr. Converse, the Chubb Road contribution.
board, I would just like to, I wish I could turn it.
Use your mic.
Turn it. Just back up.
It doesn't make any difference.
Oh, my God.
Everybody will shut theirs. Oh, I'll try this one. I would like to, is if you notice on your motion here, the amount expressed as a percentage, or if you want, we can turn that into an actual dollar amount. It doesn't make much difference. But what I would like to do as a board is have a little bit of discussion, to have a consent as to what we really want to contribute, so that when we make the motion, we don't get into a bunch of amendments and all the other stuff. So it's a fair, my ascension, and I'm going to go first if I would put it this way. One of the ways I look at this whole road project is that when we see the amount of traffic that's coming down 6 Mile and Napier Road every day, morning and night, and heavy truck traffic, heavy car traffic, especially coming through the township here during rush hours. There's a lot of traffic that's being used on this road. And due to the undesiring of the, I should say, the road commission has expressed that they will not pave 6 Mile Road. Widen it because it's narrow, it is in bad shape, and they will want to do anything with it. So what I'm going to come back and say is that when this road is paved, and it's going to be a Class A road, that the majority of the traffic coming down that road is going to be public traffic. And if it's public traffic, I don't feel it's fair to be able to have the residents bear the majority of the burden for paying for this road when it really turns out to be the majority of it. I shouldn't say a majority, and I shouldn't say a percentage. I don't know what the percentage will be, but a large percentage of it's going to be public traffic. I know I will not use, as a personal experience, I will not use the other one because of the nails and the flat tires that I've gotten from driving up and down the roads there, from people driving things, especially when it gets into the shingling time. So I think that this road is going to turn out to be as a public road, and I think as a public road that we need to share, we need to stand up and give a contribution to that. And I'm not going to say I'd come back, but I'm just going to come back and say that I think at least a third of that road is going to be, should be on our responsibility because of the fact it is going to be a public road, and we should be paying for the public portion of that road coming back in and not put that on the burdens of the landholders. So therefore, that's why I am suggesting that we put about a third of it on there as a percentage. And for roughly, why I didn't want to put a dollar amount in there, because we really don't know what the actual cost of that road is going to be. There's a lot of things still going on in the ROW roads and mitigation, and there's a few other things that are going on, and we don't know where the actual construction cost is going to be. We have estimates, and the estimates are coming right around $4 million. So what that really is coming back to is saying if it was to go about a third, that would put about $1.3 million we would be responsible for. But I don't want to be the one here coming back and dictating this. I would like to go down the line, and I'm going to ask for every person to give us a consensus number of what they feel, and I think we should come up with a number, and then we'll put that into the motion and make one motion where we actually have the dollar amount and we have it done at once. So that said, which might, you want to start, Dave?
25%, approximately 1 million. Reggie?
Well, for all the years that I've sat here on and off, we've always contributed to the infrastructure improvements, roads, ditches, etc. We contributed large dollar amounts, small dollar amounts. We all know Chubb Road has become a lot more heavier because of the increase in not only the traffic, but the construction and the economy. 6 Mile, Napier are almost, you want to avoid them. I would have to agree with Mr. Trent between $1 million, maybe $1.2 million. And again, it's only, in my eyes, again, to improve the infrastructure of our roads. Salem Township is a benefit to all, not just the people on Chubb Road.
Dale? I would say that for as much public transportation that will be on that road, coupled with the fact that of our investment income, a majority of that has been funded by the landfill. I'm going to say a third. I'm going to go with the third.
So $1.3 million is what?
That's the third.
Yeah, $1.3 million. So, once again, I think since we've been been on the board for six years, whatever, the contributions that we've made to our roads has been very significant when you look at our local roads. We we put in yearly, if you look back, anywhere from $8 to $1 million in our local roads. Then when you look at our roads in Salem Township, you have to admit that they're pretty good. We have, we've contributed to some of the main roads, which we didn't have to, but then all of our local roads with all the ditching, drainage, limestone, I believe we've completed 5 Mile, we've completed Brookville, we've done almost all of Tower Road. We've done Chubb Road from 6 to 8. I think we did that big project last year. So, that's kind of what our budget is. So I'm looking down, if we can contribute $1.3 million, what we put into our road projects next year is going to be a big chunk of that money, what we budgeted for the next year coming in March to put towards this project. So I would be for $1.3 million.
Okay. TJ?
And when I first heard about it, I was thinking $1 million when it was gonna cost $3 million. I guess with it costing more, maybe a little bit more. Between $1 million and $1.3 million
Okay.
at the most.
John?
I'd go $1.3 million to $1.5 million.
I guess just running the numbers, I would say consensus amount is 1.3. So I move Salem Township approve the Board of Trustees of Salem Township make a contribution to the general fund of Chubb Road and 5 Mile Road. This contribution would go to reduce the total financial expenses of both the project, in which it would minimize the total amount that would be needed for the property owners of the Special Assessment District. The amount that Salem Township will contribute will be expressed as, I'm going to put down 33%. And if that is, if I want the 33%, if you want a dollar amount, we can amend the motion.
Just a quick question, so if they run into overcost on the construction of the site or the road, obviously that percentage is gonna increase.
But that percentage is also based upon everybody else in the whole township.
That's true.
Or the whole thing is going to get. And it's- conversely, if it goes the other way, it will be reduced.
I really think it's going to be under that amount. I mean, they're always shooting high with their administrative costs and all that.
Yeah, that's why I would much prefer a percentage than a dollar amount, because if it comes in at 3.5, then we're still going to be stuck with 1.3.
Sure.
So I think because we have run numbers, city run council, just what ifs, this, different scenarios. And it's all over the map, depending on when you should do it. So I think it's better to stick to a percentage.
Supervisor, could I suggest that rather than have an open amount in there based on percentage, that it be phrased, expressed as 33% or an amount not to exceed 1.3 million?
Yeah, I'd feel comfortable with
Okay. Yeah.
that. Yeah, I would. Okay, I'll amend that motion to be 33%, not to exceed $1.3 million.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Just a quick, Ed, can you walk me through this again? So what's our next steps?
The
We end up having another public hearing on it.
The next step would be for the board to determine the actual assessment roll, the amount to be assessed to each parcel based on, reductions based on contribution to those who are contributing. So once those figures are determined, it'll come to the board probably for the next board meeting in January, with an actual assessment roll to be approved by the board.
Right.
And there will be a public hearing on that also.
Got it. Okay, moving on down. Mr., who we got here? We're down to
Yeah.
Mr. Winsley.
I'll read this. We have a Chubb Road and 5-mile right-of-way agreement that's going to be between Salem Township and the Washtenaw County Road Commission. Whereas the township desires for Chubb Road between 5 and 6 mile and 5 mile between Chubb and Napier to be paved, it is therefore agreed that the township will be responsible for all costs associated with the right-of-way purchases while this construction project is going on. All offers for RO right-of-way acquisition will be first presented to the township for approval. It's also further agreed that during right-of-way negotiations, the Washtenaw County Road Commission shall provide the following to the township supervisor: right-of-way updates and individual right-of-way offers made to property owners to secure the property for the project. It is further agreed that the Road Commission will oversee the project, and the project will proceed in accordance with the Federal Highway Administration and the MDOT practices and procedures for purchasing right-of-ways. It is also further agreed that the Road Commission will periodically issue invoices to the township for payment associated with these purchases of right-of-ways. It is further agreed that the township shall make payment within 30 days of receipt of these invoices. The township will be responsible for any and all actual costs to purchase the right-of-ways and secure grading permits, including the Road Commission and/or consulting staff to secure these right-of-ways. So this is an agreement.
Okay, can I have a second on this? Okay, Mr. Trent, seconds. Any other discussion?
Yeah, is this estimate that we've gotten, this $4 million, does that include an estimate for purchasing right of way?
Yeah, that's kind of what they're saying.
Is there a right of way to do purchase?
I believe so. Yeah, again, they have to do the survey, and that's what, they'll be out there knocking on doors with what they need. Okay, we have a second on this. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, down to the new fire truck bid set.
Just as an update before we read the motion, as of last winter, early last winter, we passed the motion to acquire a new fire truck and go out for, we approved the bids to go out for bid, I should say the specs to go out for bid. Those bids had some issues with them, and we really only received a minimum number of bids back, and therefore the specs were changed. Actually, they were changed twice, and when we went back out, when we back out for the final one, we had 3 fire trucks being submitted, one by Smeal, K&M, KME, and one by Spencer. A group of comprising of Jim, myself, and Joe Lukunas basically went through all these specs. Jim and Joe primarily did it to go back through to compare all of them. The Spencer truck basically came in, they didn't have a lot of the stainless steel stuff. When they put that on there, it was spec'd out, it came on high. There was some other issues with it, and basically we eliminated that from consideration. But it came back down to the KME and the Smeal truck. And those two, you can see on your second page there, they went through the whole evaluation process, and it came down to that both trucks are comparable, and they would be, and the fire department would be happy with either one of them. We, taking a look at it, and what we're looking at here, the difference of it, and why I'm going through this, is the only difference between these two trucks is the build time. One is gonna take about 330 days to build, the other one take about 420 days. But for that 420 days, it's gonna cost us, it would cost us about $30,000 to go with the shorter one. So what I'm looking at here is a desire of this board that we pay the extra $30,000 for the 3-month increase in time, delivery time, or do we want to wait? So that basically it comes down to the point of question. And I guess I would like to ask everybody's opinion, yes or no, if they would rather put the $30,000 to get the sooner delivery time.
Can I pose a question?
Yes.
Maybe Chief Rockwell can answer this for us. The most recent acquisition of a fire truck, that was through Smeal as well, was it not?
That's correct, that was the assessment.
And how has the quality of that truck been, reliability, and any issues in the last year and a half since we acquired it?
So we've been happy with reliability. There have been some issues, but they've been all covered by warranty. There was a couple of recalls that were done, again, at no cost to us. And having steel right down the road makes it fairly easy if there's any issues, if they resolve them really quick or the So part of that was not a steel recall, part of that was a recall on the truck itself on the factory. And it was just a reprogramming in the computer module. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and if we were to acquire the truck from KME, their repair center, the closest one is in Grosse Ile.
Yes, sir.
So how far away is that? How long would it take for us to travel to Grosse Ile? Hour and a half?
45 minutes to 1 hour and a half, depending on traffic, if you want to guess traffic.
The bridge is open?
Free bridge or not. They're both essentially local.
Are we familiar with KME at all as far as their repair facilities? And
We have not had a KME truck repaired by them. Our neighbor, Superior Township, has a KME truck that they took award from. So, as Mr. Converse alluded to, either truck fills the specifications. Really, the delta between the two is if we wanted earlier, we'd have to pay more. And if we don't, if we're willing to wait, we would save $30,000. So, from my aspect,
So our engine, this is an engine, right?
correct. This would be the engine.
Our engine is running, right?
Correct.
So it's not like we're dire need of one, right?
Correct.
So the other question I have is, and I know the situation with Roselli's and stuff. My question is, the repair times that we have. So so when something goes down with one of our trucks, I mean, I've been over there and seen trucks from all over there in Northville, and they seem to be waiting, whatever major is. So what is, I mean, our timeline is somebody's taking a truck right there, and that I hear it come offline over my phone when a truck is off.
Right.
And then the next day it's back on.
Or quicker. if it's
So,
not fixed.
do we know what the other company's service is like?
It certainly is not going to be to that level. Having an embedded mechanic in your department has that advantage.
Yeah,
Honestly, both of them are so close that they meet the spec. As alluded to in the proposal, the really only difference is that you're splitting hairs are those items that are listed there. We didn't want to see bias one over another. So as strictly going by facts, that's the differences between the two. 30K, if you want it quicker, we'll get it quicker, but you're going to
What about the warranty?
you'd have one more year warranty than you would with the other truck from Walker to Home. And it's listed there. Is it worth $30,000 to have that extra year? So those are, I mean, it's a weighted scale. You're comparing a Ford versus a Chevy, so to speak. We would be glad to receive either one of them.
When we take delivery of this, roughly in a year?
So one of the things that we learned from the last purchase was put liquidated damages if they don't meet the due date. So we've been told by all three manufacturers, when you do that, they do put padding in their build dates. So if something happens to a strike or whatever, that they've got some padding. So in our bid spec, we put $100 per day that they're late. So each of the manufacturers has guaranteed, in case it's 420 days from the day we approve this, that it'll be delivered to us, or it's $100 thereafter. And then KME said it'll be 330 days, and every day after that would be $100.
Could we increase it to 1,000?
I'm sure, and that price would go up with it. You can always negotiate.
Well, I always like things now, but for $30,000, I can't see why not waiting for it. That's my opinion.
General, okay.
Okay.
I think it's considered in, and we will go with this meal. Okay, I move therefore that the bid from R&R Fire Truck Repair in the amount of $566,548 for the fire truck described the fire department bid spec proposal that was pre-approved and gives Supervisor Whitaker the authorization to complete the agreement.
Second? No, we need a
Second,
second.
I'm just making.
I'll second it.
Ruka seconds. Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Board.
Okay, and on the last is the master plan. TJ.
I move that Salem Township approve the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the distribution of the master plan for the 63-day review period required by the Michigan Planning Enabling Act.
Support.
And a second, thank you.
Trent, any other questions? Any comments? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion's passed. Okay, so reports and Chief Rockwell.
First of all, Board, thank you for approving the It'll be well used. Speaking of which, we had 44 calls from the last month, and for the first time that I've been on the department, we actually got a call from Northville to support them on a structure fire. So Northville has some property on, which would be our east end, their west side, that doesn't have fire hydrants. So they had a garage fire, and they worried that it would extend to the house, and it screwed up the dispatchers because they kept saying, "You mean Northfield?" And like, no, Northville. So it was different for us to go to the east for the first time, and trying to build those bridges with our neighbors to Wayne County. So I'm really excited that that occurred. So didn't have to use it a whole lot, but it's nice to have neighbors and building those relationships. So should you need them. The second thing, we had a CO alarm go off at a house. The house ended up being over 100 parts per million on CO, actually almost reaching 200 at some times. So thankfully they had a detector. They had youngins in the house, and again, those kids and animals are more susceptible to that CO than an adult would be. So if you don't have a CO detector, please consider it. It does save lives. They do go off. We get a lot of calls where people say, oh, we don't need to pay attention to that, call us. We will come out and check it with a much more advanced meter and let you know, and sometimes we can actually pinpoint where it's coming from. So they do save lives. Buy yourself a new smoke CO detector and sleep a little bit more sounder. We just had a rollover accident that I got back from. Accidents are on an uptick, and we haven't even really hit the winter months yet. We haven't really hit the snow. We've had also an uptick in deer versus cars. We had a DOA for a deer today, this morning. So unfortunately, the driver was injured. So you know, pay attention. They're still running. So it is that time of the year. So we're getting that. And then lastly, I would like to report to the board that we've got new radios. Those are provided by the county as part of the radio consortium. We've been upgraded to our new 800 megahertz radios. They're green. They're a lot easier to see. So when you set them down like now, they don't. Hopefully you'll see them before you drive off and then they come off the bumper. So super excited about that. And so that's all I have to report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, any other board discussion tonight, board members? Any updates? Anyone have any updates?
I'd like to make a kind of an update. Most everybody that has been getting their taxes have noticed that they have a new item, line item on their taxes called the MH Mental Health and TUB, whatever it is. Basically, it's a 1 mil tax that was put on there. And everybody is wanting to know what in the world this is, because that's 1 mil is a pretty hefty amount. And we get deluged with calls every day. And I just wanted to let everybody know that what that was is last, what was that, in August, the election?
Yes.
In the August election, there was a bill put forth on the ballot that basically called for a 1 mil tax on the whole Washtenaw County. And that was to go to the law enforcement and mental health. And that passed the county. It did not pass here, but it went on the county. But unfortunately, we're in part of Washtenaw County, so everybody is going to be stuck with that. I raised fits and cane with it because that goes part of that goes back to the law enforcement, which will go to the county sheriff's department, but yet they're not passing that saving on back to us. So in other words, I have to say the same to you, grin and bear it, because we're supporting the rest of the county on that. We're getting no benefit from it, but unfortunately it was a law passed by the county, it's administered by the county, and we don't have really a say in it. So all I can do is say apologize, but there's nothing we can do about it except for grin and bear it.
Well, thanks for that great update.
Well,
Merry Christmas to you.
maybe this will be a few less phone calls I have to take to explain this.
Thanks, Dale. Thanks. Okay, down to public comment. Yes, Bonnie.
I looked it up while you guys were talking. Salem passed the marijuana thing by 213 votes, and Precinct 2, which houses our trailer court, I believe, was the high one that made it pass over in Salem. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't.
Thank you, Bonnie. Yes, Fred?
Yes, we're talking about Chubb Road and 5 Mile Road being paved and so on and so forth, and the money, and I agree completely with Dale about the township helping out, paying for this. But I'm thinking about 5 Mile Road. There's no residences on it, from what I've seen. I was on the other day from Chubb to Napier. There's only the golf course on one
I
side.
think there's one house.
Oh, there's, okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know. But there's just a golf course, and the other side is wetlands, might be owned by the landfill, I'm not sure.
ITC.
But I know either last meeting or meeting before that, one of the representatives from the golf course was here saying that that was gonna be an awful lot of money to try to pay for that road. And then it sounded like, I don't know if they could do that or not, but the last thing we need is for the golf course to sell their property and bring in another rock crusher or a concrete crusher in there. So whatever we can do to help, it would be helping all the township.
He wants to sell the miners.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Yes.
Well, I have two, one's a question and the other one's a comment. The chief over there is absolutely right on the carbon monoxide detectors. Our house is 100 feet from the road, and we had a diesel rig out in the road running, and our carbon monoxide went off in the house, and I thought, because we have a fireplace, you know, maybe I didn't put the ash bucket lid back on. I checked that it was on. And I tucked the windows and opened them at the back end of the house and put the carbon monoxide over there because we have two of them and only one was going off. And so I did that and it went fine. And a few minutes later, I closed the windows, I plugged that one back in. Probably 10 minutes later, there was another diesel rig that pulled up out in the road and was running. And like I said, our house is 100 feet from the road. Both of them went off. And I went outside to look at the fireplace on the roof to see if it was on fire. And that wasn't the case. And as soon as I walked out the door, I could smell that diesel because I've been in a high-low department in a factory before and I can smell, you know, the fumes. And that's what was causing it. And so you never know what it is, but we ran it down. But my second part is, where you're gonna pave, are you gonna pave on 5 Mile or are they gonna pave Chubb also?
Chubb also.
And that goes to where on Chubb?
Chubb between 5 and 6.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, Mr.
The roads, our Brookville Road, they put all that limestone on it, but it didn't finish the job.
Right.
The Tower Road heading east from Brookville, there's a freighter there that you could lose a motorcycle in. Okay, are they planning on doing anything with it?
Yeah, I heard that they're supposed to, and I'm surprised they haven't got it yet,
Yeah.
but I will check on that for you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I know tonight, you know, you look at this and you're thinking, we spent a lot of money. And it's kind of like, I thought, this is, this board, when we came in, I believe we were at $7.2 million in the bank. I think we're over 10 million something as of now. This board has never received a pay increase. We're not out to get money. We're here just to do our jobs. We don't go on lunches, dinners, or run up credit card bills. We just try to do the business that has been that has put us into office to run the township and be worthy and make good decisions for the township. Again, I want to just, before, you hear some comments, well, they're spending money like drunken sailors. I know you've read that in the papers before, but I do want to make a comment about that we haven't. We're a very conservative board, I believe, and our fire trucks, it was almost the most, I'll never forget, when I first became the supervisor, there was a call, one of the fire guys wanted me to go in the truck with it, and it was a tanker truck, which was filled with water. It's the only avenue we have because we don't have hydrants here. And it was the most embarrassing thing I ever been in my life, going down the road at 25 miles an hour, trying to get to a fire. It was just a dumpster fire. But we should never let our trucks get to that age. And the tanker's been a real positive thing for the township and for the fire department, and I think that whoever is here in the future, I believe that we should always put these vehicles, because they're so expensive to repair and everything, that we should get on a rotating basis so they're not all bad all at the same time. So I appreciate also that the board for doing this. So again, I appreciate everybody, and thank you so much for the support, and I appreciate, again, everybody knows my number. I appreciate if you would call me if you have issues, whether you like me or not, you can still call and we can talk. And I appreciate it, and I wish you and your families a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you next year. And be safe. Thanks again. God bless. Good night.
Get up, I had a leg cramp.
I didn't realize.